There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the FFF, where I was joined last night by co-host Matt to talk about the major leagues all across Europe. This episode does have the bonus of a running update on the Arsenal game all the way throughout, so I'm sure all of you Gunners out there will thoroughly enjoy that one. But for all of you, I really hope you enjoy the show, and thanks again for listening to the FFF. Just before we sort of get into the nitty-gritty of it, I do need to make a sort of public announcement. I had a friend who messaged me earlier today, and he basically said that I got a sort of bit of information wrong on the last podcast that I did. I did a Patrick Vieira podcast, and I mentioned on there that Thierry Henry had now taken up the manager's position at Bournemouth, which is completely wrong. So I apologise to you, Dan, and I apologise to all the listeners out there. Thierry Henry is not the new manager of Bournemouth. It's actually Jonathan Woodgate. There isn't much of a sample size when it's looking at sort of Patrick Vieira or Thierry Henry, and you would be, if you were a Bournemouth or a Championship side or a Celtic or any team like that, taking a bit of a gamble by appointing a Vieira or an Henry. But I don't know. There's Jonathan Woodgate. His time at Middlesbrough, to me, doesn't sort of raise a lot of hopes either. So it's that to me seemed to be a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, it's difficult to imagine one of those sort of managers actually pulling up trees. I don't think Henry had much of a impact in New York. I think was he before, and in fairness, European managers don't tend to have a lot of success in America. But
no,
yeah, it's unproven ground, isn't it, for a lot of them, really? And like you say, Woodgate's not done amazingly well.
No,
previously. So yeah, it's.
I think out of all of the three managers, it seems to be an odd comparison that we're comparing Henry, Vieira, and Woodgate. But hey ho, that's how we do things on the FFF. But but I think out of all of those three, I do believe Vieira to have somewhat of the best credentials, given that he did reasonably well in New York. He did reasonably well at Nice, I think, as well, because he pretty much staved them off relegation when he went there. And then I think he was fairly sacked during the second season there, because there was a lot of financial issues that they had to deal with. And they sacked him quite early on. They sacked him in December, which it's a weird one. And they were, fairly safe in the table, mid-table. It's just an odd one. But comparing that to Henry's time, where Henry, I think the Monaco job was a disaster. His brief sort of spell in Montreal, that is not a great success. And then Jonathan Woodgate with his time in Middlesbrough, that was somewhat of a disaster as well. So I would say Vieira would be at the tip of those three managers. But I don't know, because I was sort of saying on that podcast as well, on that episode, that I believe now obviously Neil Lennon has been sacked at Celtic. That sort of that job is now vacant. I don't know. There's something romantic about the idea of Vieira managing there. It's just something that I don't know. I can't give a clear explanation as to why I like it, but it just to me it seems like a good idea.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's pretty much a free swing, really. I think at Celtic at the minute, they're what's something like 16 points behind Rangers. They lost to Ross County at the weekend. They pretty much can't do any worse than they have done this season under Lennon. It's been a real struggle of a season this season. So whoever goes in has a little bit of space, a little bit of patience, I would imagine, to change things around. And I think Henry, the likes of Henry or Vieira, it's an A-lister. It would get people through the door, figuratively, obviously, but it might be the way to go. It might be the chance that they could take, whether or not you're going to get the likes of sort of Eddie Howe or someone a bit more traditional in that sense.
AVB, is that a possibility? Do you think?
Unlikely, I would imagine. I think he's probably going to be aiming a little higher in his career. I think he's going to want to go a step above Celtic, which I'm not meaning to denigrate Celtic, obviously, but there are teams out there that probably he could aim for, I would imagine.
Yeah. Do you think? I don't know. I just think with AVB, I think he's his trajectory is slightly downwards more than it was upwards when he sort of took over at Chelsea. Because obviously when he finished at Porto, that's where everything was in the ascendancy. He was sort of seen as the next best thing. And then just ever since, that Chelsea role, essentially it was a bit of a downward slide down to Tottenham. And I don't think he's really managed to sort of pick things up. I think Marseille, he possibly left at the wrong time, left it too late to be there, because there were times when he was absolutely flying with Marseille. And then it just, that obviously ended up in a chaotic way.
Yeah.
So maybe now it's a case of he needs to take a bit of a stepping stone for him to get his career back on track. And maybe it's just me being the old romanticist again. But yeah, for me, I think that would make a pretty decent fit as well. And I think as well, I think Celtic had become so accustomed to the Rodgers style of football, that attacking style of football. They'll definitely get that with AVB. Most definitely get that with AVB. But again, it's just, it all depends. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we will. I mean, it's early days. It was only at the time of recording, it was only a few hours ago, I think, wasn't it? It was today. So
yeah,
it'll it's not the most sought after job in European football, I wouldn't have thought. But it's quite a proving ground for a lot of managers as well. Brendan Rodgers did a good job. He resurrected his career, and Celtic, they are an institution. So hopefully they start to challenge, because it is nice to see that title challenge between Rangers and Celtic. It's always a pleasure to watch. So hopefully they start to pick up some results sometime soon. Anyway.
Yeah, so I think that just that sort of rivalry, having that lit back up again with Rangers, that could be quite attractive to managers wanting a new challenge as well.
Yeah, potentially. There isn't a bigger rivalry, I think, politically as well as on the football pitch. I don't think. I think you're going to be looking at sort of a Milan derby and things like that for a bigger atmosphere. But that Celtic derby, Celtic Rangers derby is massive, and when crowds come back, there is nothing like it. And I've got friends who support Rangers and Celtic, and they both absolutely love it. So it'll be good to see them return to form. But this season's a foregone conclusion. Rangers have wrapped it up already. There's only, I think, 8 games left, and Rangers are really flying high in Europe as well for once, after that remarkable result last week. But it'll be interesting next season anyway, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of foregone conclusions, I don't think it's as much of a foregone conclusion in the Premier League as it is in the SPL, but it does look as if the Man City title race is essentially over. It looks as if it's heading to the blue side of Manchester, which I'm sure you're not too pleased about. But what's your thoughts on it, really?
Yeah, I mean, you say I'm not too pleased about it, but I think this season I wasn't expecting any great guns. I wasn't expecting us to win it or anything like that.
No.
I'm pleased in a sense that Liverpool aren't winning it, from that old rivalry, that tribal sort of rivalry. I'm pleased Liverpool aren't winning. I'm not necessarily going to say I'm pleased that Liverpool are doing so badly, but I'm not losing any sleep over them. But Man City have just walked away with it now. I thought they might be struggling towards the beginning of the season. I think they really sort of struggled to pick up some results and get any kind of momentum going. But now, the last couple of months have just been ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's an absolutely insane set of form there. I mean, is it 19 wins in a row or something like that? And 12 wins away or something. It's remarkable how they've just switched it on. And that quadruple, I can't necessarily say for sure that they're going to do that, but I wouldn't bet against it this season. Not with everybody else doing so poorly. I think it's if they're going to do it, they're going to do it this season.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think they're now 2-0 with an away advantage, aren't they, in the Champions League? So although it's usually a lot further, I think, in the sort of quarters, semis, where they usually come unstuck. But I don't know, what just gives me a different vibe about Man City is their defensive solidness. There was obviously the second season under Guardiola when they were just, I think they were just destroy teams with their sort of offensive capabilities, where it's now it just seems to there seems to be more of a solid structure about them when they're playing these games. And I don't know whether Diaz for me has been so impressive. I've been so taken back by how well he's taken to the game, and he kind of reminds me of Company in the sense that he just controls games. He seems to be the leader. He seems to be the captain. He's just that real force in that team, and it's a scary prospect because in a way he's somewhat better than Company, because obviously Company, when Guardiola came in, was sort of nearing towards the latter part of his career, whereas Diaz now he's really in the peak of his powers. So it's quite a scary prospect when you think about it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Diaz. I think there was some concerns whether or not he would fit into that Company mold, and I think City for a good number of months struggled to fit that and find that balance and that sort of formula to work in defence. That's obviously been a problem of the past now with Stones and Diaz partnering up in a real, like you say, solid defensive unit. And Stones is rejuvenation under Pep, and with that partnership with Diaz has been an absolute transformation for me. And he's knocking on England's door now for sure.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that City potentially struggled with, was their defensive strength. And now with that structure in place, it's with Cancelo as well, Laporte, they've got a decent set of defenders there, which they didn't necessarily have before, and they relied on their attacking force. The whole mantra before was, the best form of defence is attack, and that was always the City way. That's still the City way, but now they've got a real, rock to form that, structure upon. Edison as well, he's an amazing goalkeeper. He's incredible. Not just as a goalkeeper, but as an outfield player as well. His distribution is, it's been talked about, by others, and certainly a lot better than me. But his distribution is insane, and he's one of the only goalkeepers who you can potentially count upon for assists.
Yeah,
and that's just ridiculous. You shouldn't have that luxury in your team, but
no.
It just flows so well. And the game against Mönchengladbach was a real highlight of not only their ambition, but their sort of smooth, their connections, their flow, how they work well together as a team was just really impressive for me. And it spoke volumes to me that Pep was disappointed that it wasn't good enough for him. He was saying that they should have taken more out of the game, and they should have dominated a bit more. So that spoke volumes to me, despite the fact it was a comfortable victory. That Mönchengladbach weren't going to challenge at any point, I don't think, necessarily. And to come away with a 2-0 away win, I think that's a pretty fair result on the night. But yeah, it could have been more.
It does look unlikely for sort of other teams to sort of mount any title challenge, really. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't bet any money on sort of Man City losing the title grasp anytime soon, really.
Yeah, no, it's 10 points now, and it's not just the point gap; it's the form of all the teams underneath. I think there's, apart from Chelsea, I think they've picked up a few decent results recently. I don't think there's anybody necessarily who are going to go that distance with City. It's a shame, really, because the points that Man United should have won would have left them about a point behind. If they'd have picked up those victories, that if it had held on for that victory against Everton instead of drawing 3-3, that would have been another 2 points. And those kind of little tiny victories and dropped points would have really stood us in good stead. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. So it's City's all the way. I'd be paying out if I was a betting company. I'd be paying out on City to win by now.
That's the one. Obviously, we'll talk about it later. The relegation fight, that seems to be an interesting one in the Premier League as well. But obviously, the top 4 one, that's an interesting one because you've got, I think, is it sort of 2nd to 7th, and there's only 5 points between West Ham in 4th and Everton in 7th. So yeah, it's very evenly and interestingly poised.
Yeah, it really is. And then Villa obviously have got a game in hand as well, so that would only sort of taken the point behind Everton. So again, they go into the mix for that European qualification. So it is really nice, quite well balanced, really, and it's anyone's game, really. I think I'd be hard pressed to see United and Leicester drop out of that European qualification, but the rest, I think, are really going to be pushing it to the wire. Been impressed with West Ham. They've been a decent. Offer this season so far under Moyes. They've done really well, and I've been really it's been quite pleasing to see that West Ham team do really well. Moyes deserves it, I think. So it'll be an absolute revelation if they get Champions League football by the end of this season.
If I could push you for a top 4?
Top 4, obviously City, then United, Leicester for me, and I can see Chelsea getting it.
Yeah,
I can see with that run of form. I think they may hold out, and I think Liverpool are going to struggle to regain any kind of momentum now. I think they've lost too much ground on those above. I think they're struggling with a lot of different issues off the field as well. Obviously, we've spoken about, and defensively as well. I don't think that's ever going to get fixed anytime this season.
Yeah,
it's going to be a real struggle for them. So they'll be Europa League, I think, at best.
Yeah, I can't really argue that, because I think with Chelsea, given the fact that they seem to be in the groove now with Tuchel, even though they sort of drew that last game, I do think under Tuchel, I don't know how we're saying it, but I think under
Tuchel for me.
Tuchel, under Tuchel, it seems I actually rate him as a manager. I think he's a decent manager, he's a decent coach, and I think he'll get a lot out of Chelsea, and especially considering Chelsea have an absolute wealth of talent. And I do think the likes of Werner and Havertz will benefit massively under his tutelage, obviously from the same country. I think that goes a long way as well. Yeah, it's an interesting one for Chelsea, but they're good money for the top 4 spot.
Yeah, like I say, the form is really on their side, and I think Tuchel has really turned it around for them so far. So, it's going to be a tight one, but I definitely think they'll get the 4th place, or at least 4th. And as much as I'd love West Ham to do it, I don't think they're going to do
No.
Champions League. But Europe's a possibility. I'd like to see Everton do well, do a lot better than they previously have.
Yeah.
That 7th place, that 6th, 7th place that Everton always usually occupy. At least they did with Moyes. I think I'd like to see them supersede that a little bit and go a little bit higher than that. But it's going to be an interesting run-in for sure.
Definitely. Another interesting run-in, the relegation battle. Did you see the Brighton Palace game, Matt?
I saw bits of it. Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing. No. But,
I've only seen the highlights, but the media's kind of made a big thing of it. But because there's obviously there's been tons of games throughout history where this sort of similar thing has happened. It's a very smash and grab type of game, but it's probably one of the most smashiest and grabbiest of performances from Palace. Brighton, they had 75% possession, 25
Wow.
shots with 5 on target, and obviously only 1 went in. Where Palace, they only had 3 shots and 2 went in. But I don't know if you've seen the goals, but those goals, especially Benteke's, to score that with the last kick of the game, it's an exquisite volley. And it's Benteke as well. He's just like, what happened there? He's just all of a sudden turned into Gerd Müller and scored this wonder goal.
He's always been I've often been quite fond of Benteke. I think it was always kind of funny to watch his lack of form, and he went God knows how many months and how many games without scoring. But I've always been, fond of him as that kind of target man in that sort of Lukaku sort of mold, but not as good. It's always pleasing to see him do well, though. I do like him. So it was a remarkable result, wasn't it? Last minute, last goal, last kick of the game. Yeah, unfortunate for Brighton. I think they're going to struggle. It's going to be them and Newcastle who are going to struggle for that relegation spot. I think with Fulham on the march as well.
Yeah,
it'll be a tough one for them too. It's going to be a right battle by the end of the season.
I mean, if I was pushed to give a choice of 3 for relegation, I would have to put Brighton in there. With Brighton, West Brom, and Sheffield United being the 3 to go down in my pick. I just think with Brighton, just that lack of that clinical edge, just the fact that, I mean, you can play pretty football, you can play beautiful football all you want, but at the end of the day, if you don't put those goals in, it could be the death of you. And I think that's
true. That's true. I think you could say the same thing about Newcastle, though, couldn't you? I think they've got no target man. Callum Wilson's out for however long. He was their key, really. He was their linchpin for the running for the season. They've got no threat going forward whatsoever. It's been spoken about before, and I think that's going to really hamper them. And I would argue that they're going to be a more risk than Brighton for relegation myself. That's dependent, obviously, on Fulham pulling through. But for me, it's Newcastle to go down, I reckon.
Yeah, I don't think Fulham will go down. I think Fulham just look so good at the moment. They seem absolutely in the flow with Parker. I think he's got them playing exquisite football, and they just look too good to go down. And that's just my opinion. But then when it comes to Newcastle, it's just something that puts me on they're sort of favouring them for survival. It's just the fact that under Steve Bruce, you've got a manager that can. I know he's been relegated with a few clubs in the past, but for me, perhaps when you need to just sort of dig in and scrap at all cost, and perhaps just picking up the sort of odd point here and there, that's going to help you. Whereas I think with Brighton, they'll try and go out for the kill in every game, and essentially that might be the undoing of them. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, I wouldn't, if I'm not a betting man anyway, but if I had to bet a lot of money on it, I definitely wouldn't do so. But if at a push, I'd probably just say Brighton, just because of that lack of that clinical edge, like I say.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to have this same conversation. So put a pin in this, and we'll come back to it in a month's time and see what's changed. But
definitely,
I'll be keeping a close eye on that. I'm almost sort of keeping more of an eye on the bottom of the league than the top of the league at the moment. It's more interesting to me, but we'll see. Watch this space.
Yeah, speaking about keeping an eye on things, I've just looked at the score now. The Arsenal match is 2-2, which means as things stand, I think Benfica go through, which is not great. And there's 15 minutes left to play. So yeah, not too happy as an Arsenal fan, but the fact, if we just score, we just need that one goal. Typical Arsenal.
So it's 3-3 on aggregate, wasn't it? I think, or it is now anyway. So
Benfica with the 2 away goals, which is just harder to take. Like when we were talking about it before, that this isn't okay. You can say technically it's an away goal. It's not really an away goal. There's no advantage it's taken from sort of home and away with the current status of things as they are.
Yeah.
It just seems to be a bit of a
faff. Away goals are just redundant nowadays. I think it's just. I could understand why they were brought in the first place, 50 years ago or whatever it was, when away travel involved taking a train for 20 hours and a flight overnight and 2 days of travel and all sorts, playing on an awful pitch which you weren't used to and all that business. But that's not an issue anymore, so I don't know why away goals really count, especially at elite level.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me now.
Yeah, it's an odd one, but it's one of those archaic rules that probably take a while for them to
it's not going to help Arsenal now anyway, is it?
No. But hopefully we've still got 15 minutes left to play. But just knowing the way we are, well, it's just it just smacks of last year when we did this. I think it's even the exact same scoreline when we lost to Olympiacos. I got kicked out. I think it's the exact stage as well. The last round of 16 or whatever you want to call it. Oh well. And just before we get off the Premier League, I just want to ask you about Southampton. What's your thoughts? Because it seems to me as if they need to wake up really and be careful, because they've lost their last 8 out of 9, and then they've obviously got Everton, City, and Brighton around the corner. It's not looking good for them.
It really isn't, is it? I think we were talking about Hasenhüttl as being quite a good manager and being one of the managers that potentially could have got the Dortmund job.
I think they were top of the league at one point. Southampton.
Yeah, exactly. At the start of the season they were flying, but they've just fallen away massively now. And I think they've probably done enough to stave off relegation, obviously, but their form has been woeful. And defensively just absolutely dire. Yeah, it's all gone wrong for them. I don't quite know what the solution would be, to be honest.
No, it's one that, I mean, perhaps they were in a similar sort of situation when they got smashed 9-0 by Leicester City, and they just needed something to come out of somewhere for them to just sort of rally around and get the troops up and going again. But they need to sort it out, and they need to sort it out soon.
Yeah. It's been a season of sort of wild contrasts for Southampton, and I think almost there's an argument to say that it's kind of regressing to the mean now. I think this is where you might expect Southampton to have finished at the end of the season, and I think that's probably quite a reasonable 14th, 15th. That's kind of a reasonable position for them. So as long as they don't do any worse than they are already doing, I think they might be all right for this season. But yeah, it's a bit of a surprise given the massive start they had this season.
Yeah, they need to stop losing. And a team also in a different league, in the Bundesliga, they need to stop losing as well, which is Hertha Berlin. Yeah, that's the team that I was hoping to pull the segue into. But yeah, Hertha Berlin, they have lost the last 6 out of 8 in the Bundesliga.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think they're, if I just have a look at the table now, they are they're on the same points as Arminia Bielefeld. They're in 15th. So,
and Arminia Bielefeld have got a game in hand as well. So I'm not going to say that that's a shoe-in for points, but
no,
that's still a risk. And yeah, that form's been really shocking, hasn't it? They had a decent start as well.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to start with Hertha Berlin is I just wanted to sort of talk about Guendouzi for a bit, because I don't know if you noticed, but the Hertha Berlin manager came out the other day, and this is the statement, I've got it here. It's like puberty for him. He's kind of a rebel. He has to work and learn like an animal. It kind of makes me think that Arteta really wasn't wrong to have his doubts about him in the first place, especially after that Brighton game where he sort of put his hands around Neil Maupay, I believe it was, and I think as well it was reported that this is what Maupay said, that he was going around telling the Brighton players how much he earned and how much he earned considerably more than they did. And if you also take that into account with the fact that at Montpellier, at Lorient, he had disciplinary issues. At PSG, he had disciplinary issues, and then obviously at Arsenal, and now at Hertha Berlin. So every club he's played for, there's been this attitude and ego problem. It's a weird one for him. He's such a talented player. There's obviously real quality to his game. But if he can't sort that side out of his game, if he can't sort that side out of his own personality, it doesn't bode well for him, does it?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, 21 years old, he's still got a lot of learning to do. I think that those comments by the to manager probably weren't far off the mark. I don't think. So he's got some learning to do, and potentially it might be a little bit chasing him to be in that relegation scrap and have that fight and that battle and fight for something that means something rather than try and have that arrogance beaten out of him. Hopefully, so yeah, it'll be an interesting one. Do you imagine he'll get recalled to Arsenal? Do you think he's?
No, I would be absolutely flabbergasted unless we were in just desperate need. Maybe if we ended up towards the sort of relegation zone, which I don't think will happen, but if things just were looking really bad and we just needed as much sort of help as possible, then maybe. But I don't know. Just considering the way that he left, the way that he was sort of cast out to Germany, I just can't see it happening. I don't think Arteta favours him. I think Arteta has noticed that side of his game, and it's not a good side of any player, even at the age of 21. I know it's still young, but to have that, I think it's even beyond the likes of sort of disciplinary issues or the sort of individuality that you see from players like Pogba and so on. It's just perhaps gone across that other side of the line. And it's one that he has to sort out for his own future, because it looks unlikely that he's going to play for Arsenal, but he could also make it very unlikely that he'll play for another team, because I don't know how many other teams are going to want to look at that and want to take a gamble on it. For me, it doesn't seem like it's likely.
Yeah, there will be some team that will want him, I would imagine. I mean, he's got a bit of pedigree with. He played for France at all the sort of under 21 levels, under 18s, under 17s, and all that business. So there must be something there that saw some potential initially. That doesn't just disappear. So hopefully he learns something from the last 3 months and starts to grow up.
Yeah, he got on relatively well with Unai Emery as well. I don't think there was any sort of bad blood or anything untoward that happened between him and his spell at Arsenal when Emery was the manager. And obviously Emery's now at Villarreal, so perhaps that might be a marriage to foresee in the future. So going on to the other part of the Bundesliga, the upper part, with Bayern Munich. Well, I think we were, 2 weeks ago, we were kind of we were saying, it's all but over now, pretty much for the Bundesliga. It doesn't look like there's any title race. It's Bayern Munich have got the steam engine up and running, but now there's only 2 points between them and RB Leipzig. It's crazy to think, really.
We were saying the same thing about Bayern that we said about Man City just a moment ago. I think we were sort of saying, it's all written, everything's sewn up. It's Bayern's to win, to lose rather, and it just goes to show a draw and a loss in the last couple of games. And I think, it's back on. So it's 2 points. There's still a gap. Bayern showed midweek in the Champions League that they mean business. They really came quite strong in that 4-1 victory there. So I don't imagine that's a World Super Cup break that they had that seemed to throw a bit of a spanner in the works. I think they've probably worked that out of their system now. I'm cautiously optimistic for the rest of the season. I think for Bayern, I think they'll still pull through. I think.
Yeah. I mean, I possibly, I do believe Bayern Munich will be good for it, but Yeah, it's definitely made things more interesting, and that's at least a bit of sort of consolation for this sort of shit season that every football fan is having at the moment. But
more interested by the 3-3 draw with Bielefeld. I think that was fascinating for me. I thought defensively, Bayern were probably one of the stronger teams. Given that they, not recently obviously, but yeah, that was a real shock for one of the lower league teams to pick up a point against them. And yeah, it was remarkable 3-3 match. It was an incredible match to watch. It was just like they'd forgotten to play football, how to play football. It was park football for something. It was ridiculous. So yeah, we'll see what this weekend brings anyway. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, Aubameyang's just scored, so that I gave a bit of a fist pump in the air. So it's now 4-3. Oh yes, that's great. Just please hold on, boys. We can do it. We can do it.
Can't be much longer now. There must be a few minutes to go.
There is. What is that? 5 minutes left. 5 minutes of normal time. Come on, Matt. We can do it. Please pray for us. Put all those Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira feuds to a side. This can be done.
Absolutely. I'd like to see Arsenal go through. Benfica are good. I like Benfica as a club and as a, but yeah, Arsenal deserve something out of this season anyway.
With going back to Bayern Munich, where I think a lot of the fans are probably not too happy with Bayern winning again. It would possibly, it's boring or Bayern winning everything again. But I mean, and we've talked about this before, but would they really accept Leipzig winning it? I doubt it.
No, I can't imagine though. It'll be, it'll just send shockwave throughout Europe really if Leipzig win. So yeah, I'm hoping, fingers crossed they don't. I don't mind them challenging and things like that, but it just, something about it just makes me feel so uncomfortable. So, and I say that as an Englishman, so I can't imagine what the traditional German purist would feel. About Leipzig winning. It'll be a turn up for the books. So, but I think Bayern are too strong for that. I don't think they'll give up that title anytime soon.
Yeah. It's one we'll have to keep an eye on, mate. But there's only 2 points in it, so it's it's not completely out of the realms of the extraordinary. So we'll have to see, really.
But that chasing pack, though, they sort of give up points to each other, don't they? They all sort of have that tradition, and certainly in the last few couple of months, where they'll give points to each other and they'll take points away, and then that kind of slows things down. And whereas that allowed Bayern to really sort of extend that league, which has been cut recently, obviously, but I think that'll still be the same process for the sort of close of the season.
Yeah. Considering the sort of tight race between Bayern and RB Leipzig, it's a bit of a bizarre bit of business. Sort of Dyer Upamecano going from Leipzig to Bayern. I mean, do you find it a bit distasteful in the way that the Bayern have done this in the past so many times, where they just seem to pick off the best players from the sort of the next best teams in and around them?
It's probably the right way to word it, distasteful almost, because it it just reinforces that same structure that Bayern have obviously held for the last 2 decades or whatever it is, a decade and a half. It's the same it was with Lewandowski, obviously, as well, and other players. They seem to sort of harvest all the best talent in order to keep and maintain their status as a sort of premier club in Germany. I don't think that's ever going to change anytime soon, and I'm not particularly upset about Upamecano going as well. I don't think anybody expected him to stay. So, it was a pretty standard bit of business, really. But they certainly need it anyway. They need that a little bit of sort of defensive reinforcement, I would say. So it could do really well for them.
Any idea who would form their first choice partnership with Upamecano? Would it be Sula or Boateng?
Potentially, yeah, Boateng. It's a bit of youth as well. So Bayern are a bit of an aging team as well, I think, for a few of their positions. So it could inject a bit of sort of youthful vigour to the team. So it might turn out to be quite a nice bit of business, really. Yeah. So, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, because I think you said on Twitter it was essentially a replacement for Alaba. So
because he's not staying the season, is he? He's going. So it could well be that sort of partnership that they're after. It was just a shame. I was quite looking forward to Upamecano going to Man United as well. I think that was rumoured at the start of the season.
Yeah.
But Leipzig got trounced, I think, in Europe, and then it kind of that fell away, all that talk. So it's obviously reverting back to that same old harvesting of German talent and going to Bayern. So.
There was even Upamecano to Arsenal talk. So considering he's gone to Bayern, it just shows how much we were in dreamland, really.
Yeah. But yeah, they've got a decent back line now. I mean, Pavard, Boateng, all those kind of players. They're looking pretty
Hernandez
decent
as well. Yeah.
And with Alaba going, he was obviously quite a pretty big profile player in the team. So yeah, he's going to be a hard one to replace. So beyond, I mean, who else do you buy at that level now? I think there's you've got your big name defenders, obviously with the Van Dijks and everyone like that, but that lower level of defender that you can afford as well and have a bit of youth is quite hard to find at the minute. I think defensively, there's not a lot of value in the market. So
Marco Rose to Borussia Dortmund. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think we sort of talked about Rose going to Dortmund at the way back when in one of the first podcasts that we did, and I'm not surprised.
No.
I think it's kind of like that tiered progression, like we say with Upamecano as well. Going to Bayern Munich, you've got that kind of tier of all the rest of the clubs feeding into those Dortmund and Bayern Munich kind of teams, and it's the same with management as well. So Rosa going to Dortmund isn't a surprise. Mönchengladbach have been fighting quite well this season. They've been probably battling above and beyond what they're expected. I know they're 8th, but still in Europe, they're doing a decent job. So it's it'll be an interesting one, an interesting appointment. Whether it's a bit of a sideways move from Terzic, I don't know. We'll see. I've not been massively impressed with Rosa so far. So
because I mean, when he first went into Mönchengladbach, it seemed as if he got off to a bit of a flying start. I think that first season with him there, they did really well. I think, did they end up in 4th or 3rd? I can't remember exactly, but they ended up in a respectable position. Whereas this season, it just seemed to be floundering. I think they're in 7th or 8th now, and it's Why do you think that is? Why do you think Rosa started off so well and then things have just not gone so well?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, really. I think a bit of a fresh new manager bounce, maybe, I don't know, but it's a hard one to rationalise, really, to see why they've slipped away so much. I'm sure there are probably reasons behind it. I think the recent run of form has been really poor in the league, hasn't it? So it's 2 losses, 2 draws, which is really poor. Obviously distracted by Europe, I think. So that could be a factor in that one. And I think they're going to struggle to get into Europe at this rate, I think. So he's gone at a decent time. He signed that contract and that transferred to Dortmund at a decent time when perhaps if he'd have done the same at the end of the season, it might have been a different matter. He might not have had the opportunity. So it's quite a shrewd move for him, to be honest, because I don't think he would have, like I said, I don't think he would have potentially been given the same opportunity, given that the season is fizzling out a little bit for Mönchengladbach.
But yeah, we'll have to obviously see when he takes over at Dortmund how he fares. But I can't really see it going as badly as it kind of is for them at the moment. With the likes of Haaland there, whether he'll be there next season, it sort of begs the question. But if he does have Haaland at his disposal and Sancho as well, with big question marks over his sort of staying at Dortmund, But if he is able to have those at his disposal, then yeah, I think he'll have a good pot of players to sort of pick from. But yeah.
Yeah, it'll be gutted, wouldn't it, if he turns up through the gate next season and then Haaland's gone, Sancho's gone, all these players have gone.
Yeah,
we'll see. It'll be a real tough ask to keep hold of those two, for instance, and I can't see anybody being too surprised if Haaland goes. If Haaland leaves at the end of the season, whether it's to go to Bayern or abroad, we'll see on that one. But yeah, he'll have a bit of a struggle, to be honest, if he doesn't retain the sort of key talent and key members of the squad.
Arsenal report, we have just qualified. We've got through, so it's finished 4-3. So that's
very good.
Woohoo! Breathe a big sigh of relief on that one. Yeah, I'm shocked really. I'm kind of gutted I didn't watch it because it sounds like an absolute cracker of a match. At the same time, I would have lost my nails. I would have bitten them away to crazy. So yeah, it's I'm just glad we've made it through. That's good.
Are you would you sacrifice the progress in Europe for a decent league position though? League finish this season?
I think
it's that much of a priority for you this season.
It's too little, too late now. I think we've absolutely fucked things up in the league so badly that it doesn't matter. I don't think realistically chances of a top 4 finish are absolutely out the window in my opinion. Just seeing the way that the squad is, and we look quite depleted in some areas of the pitch. I think we desperately need a new right back. We desperately need a decent partner in there for Partey. I think Xhaka and El Neni are very decent midfielders, but they leave you very exposed. And then you've kind of got an aging David Luiz, who Arteta just seems to favour. I mean, it's sort of 8 sort of games out of 10, he'll provide you with some quality, and he'll keep you a clean sheet. But there's always, it's like Russian roulette. There's just that odd chance that every sort of 2 or 3 games out of those 10, he'll shoot the team in the foot. And that's, that for me is just worrying. And I just don't think we've got it in us to be decent in the league. That's where I've got all of my hopes now in Europa League, because I just think with the Europa League, that's where, just that cup competition, having that, just, and we've got history there. And obviously Arteta's got history there with the cup as well, having won an FA Cup. Essentially, we could do the same thing with the Europa League. So, yeah, I'm more optimistic about that than I am of our league title at the moment.
Yeah. No, it'll be. There needs a bit of a restructure, I think. It needs to shift a lot of the deadwood from the squad. It seems he already started, didn't he, Arteta? He always had. He had a pretty good vision of what he wanted, but it's practically speaking, how do you do that without upsetting the balance too much? And yeah, it's. I think next season or the season after is going to be a real sort of development stage. So I think potentially, if the board stick with him, they could be onto a bit of a winner there. But it's having that faith and having that patience to see it through.
Yeah, well, I'm willing to have that patience because I think the signs are encouraging. It's possibly, I mean, to say that the season's been a disappointment is an understatement. It's been a horrible season to endure as an Arsenal fan, but having seen the way that we played against Chelsea and then a sort of run of games that we went on from there, and the way that we performed with the likes of Emil Smith-Rowe coming in, with the likes of Saka just playing phenomenally basically throughout the whole season, and then Tierney, and obviously with Partey coming in as well, there's some real good promising shoots of potential there, and that gives me hope. And I think if we just carry on with decent recruitment, with similar sort of recruitment to what we've done, avoid the Willians. just please avoid any player like Willian. Please try with all your might, Edu, to get rid of Willian, because I can't bear seeing him in an Arsenal shirt anymore. But I mean, like I said, with all those previous things, putting those into consideration, I do think the signs look good. I don't think a lot of Arsenal fans would be in agreement with me. I don't think a lot of Arsenal fans would be happy if we finished in 10th. They'd probably be on the Arteta out bandwagon. But just, if we really look at it with some sense, there's a lot of mitigating circumstances there. We have to realise this is a building period. This is a transition season for us. But next season, we can't, I think anything less than top 4 or top 6, it's a disaster, and that would be a call for us having to change manager. But let's see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's you've got a real good base of players there, 6-7 decent players. That if you can hold on to them, then you can really work some magic next season. So fingers crossed for you.
Yeah. In the Serie A, Matt, Inter are looking good. Laura Martinez seems to be firing again. I think it's 3 out of the last 4 games that he scored in. I think that was potentially why Inter Milan were having sort of struggles throughout the season. There weren't obviously, Lukaku has been on fire all season. He's been phenomenal. But then I think that perhaps we're depending on him a bit too much. But now Martinez has sort of come into the frame as well. It kind of makes them good money for the Serie A title. What do you think?
I think so. I think I would agree with you, but only because I think Milan are slipping off. AC Milan are slipping away too much. I think they've had a real bad run of form recently. I don't think they're strong enough to really contend. So I think they're going to fizzle out by the end of the season. I think the Milan derby was testament to that. That sort of showed where that balance of power lay now. So Inter are looking really good. I think Juventus aren't necessarily strong enough to really challenge. So it'll take a big shock for Inter Milan to slip up, and it's theirs to lose now. I think realistically, given everybody else's circumstances, I think they'd really do. It'd be a surprise if they were to lose that. It's only 4 points, but like I say, AC Milan, they're not. They're struggling now. So
yeah. In the La Liga, I don't know if you just refer to it as La Liga. In La Liga,
La Liga,
the
Liga.
Yeah, exactly. I think my Spanish teacher wouldn't be too proud of me there. I know we've sort of spoken of teams in the Premier League having to sort of avoid relegation, but Atletico, they need to wake up and get their shit together in order to keep hold of the lead in La Liga, because Real, Sevilla, and Barca, they're all absolutely in form and they're firing.
Yeah, they really are, aren't they? I think that's that lead was. It must have been. Was it nearly double figures at some point? I think so. To lose that, and it's what 3 points now between Atleti and Real Madrid. So they really need to sort of pick up their form a little bit. They've had a bad run of form, a couple of draws, a loss, I think, in the last 5 games. So we'll see. I think they're missing a few decent players. Obviously, Trippier's banned, I think, still, isn't he? He's going to be out for a while. So I can't. It's going to be a tight one. It's going to really go down to the wire for me. I think.
Yeah.
Be surprised if they hold out with the form that Real Madrid are in. They seem to be on a rich vein of form at the moment.
Yeah. I think Atletico, they just need to turn things around, because they just seem to be on such a slide now that it's dangerous. It almost reminds me of Liverpool when they I can't remember which title it was, but the one with Steven Gerrard slipping and Demba Ba scoring for Chelsea. They need to be careful. They really need to be careful.
Well, speaking as a Man United fan, it's kind of like that Newcastle lead that they had of God knows how many 11 points was it or something, which they managed to blow. So I think Atletico Madrid, I think they're in a real risk of repeating that poor second half of the season. So but like I say, Trippier's out, Carrasco's out at the minute. I think it's a real struggle when they've not got that sort of supply line to the likes of Suarez, who was on a rich run of form with that goal scoring feat of absolute brilliance this season. It's been remarkable for him to go from Barca to Atletico and do what he's done. So I'm hopeful. I think Simeone's got a decent pedigree there. I think, but it's going to be a tough one for them. I think an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. I think all they need to do really is just in a Simeone style, just grind out some wins because, they're in trouble. They're in trouble of letting that slip. Really.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We've got a game in hand though, so that could give them a bit more daylight that they potentially need. But it's been a real interesting season in Spain this season.
Yeah, definitely. It's I mean, we kind of talked about 2 weeks ago because I think when we mentioned in that show, we just talked about how France and Italy were essentially the only leagues where there was a bit of a title race. But now you've got sort of Germany, Spain. It's great. It's great as a sort of neutral, really, to see that.
Yeah, it is. Yes, I remember saying that we didn't really have a league where we could look at it and say, right, there's a real title race on there, apart from Italy, and that's kind of been sewn up to a degree with Inter Milan. I think, like I say, I think Inter Milan are going to be too hard to beat now. But yeah, with France as well. France has been an interesting one. I always look to France and I always look to PSG and kind of hope that they lose. I don't know what it is about PSG, but they're kind of like a club with no class, for me, no kind of heritage. Born in the 70s, for instance. I don't think they've inspired particularly too much loyalty. Certainly not from me. So I'm quite quietly confident that they might slip up this season and lose their sort of preeminent position in France. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, there's all the chance of it happening. There's only 4 points between them and Lille in top spot. But they lost their last game. They've lost 2 in their last 5. Yeah, it's very much a possibility that the league and title could go to a different team. But it's also just good to see. Although we talked about how great it is to see these sort of title challenges in Germany, in Spain, and in Italy as well. Although I know, obviously, I do agree that Italy one does seem to be sort of sewn up. But in France, that's the one where it's really interesting because it's a 4-horse race there, and it's good to see.
Yeah, it really is. I would love Lyon to win. I like Lyon just purely because of their sort of ethics. I quite like their investment in women's football as well. I think that's been really nice to see. So I'd like to see just a changing of the guard. Really, it's a bit boring when you've got PSG who clearly have ploughed millions, billions of pounds, of euros into the club, and essentially bought the league and bought their success. Which, I mean, you could argue every club does that, but then they've really taken it to the extreme. And there's no building progress. They've sort of bought their way to success. So, like I say, it's pleasing to see that they're struggling a little bit. But that said, that Champions League midweek game against who was it? That 4-1 victory was just ridiculous against Barcelona. That performance, if they can pull that out every week, then they've got no problem whatsoever. But then the trouble is they turned up at Monaco and lost 2-0. So there's no consistency there. But if they deliver that level of performance like they did against Barcelona, then they've got no problem whatsoever.
Maybe they're just sort of saving all the reserves for the Champions League because although those players are essentially Mbappe, the Icardi, the sort of big name players will be picked for the sort of league matches as well. I think maybe they just don't want to sort of overdo things and sort of save their energy and their fuel for the big ones. And the big one for them, for a PSG, that their golden target, if you will, is the Champions League. You know, if it doesn't matter, any manager that goes in there, when Pochettino's going in there, he's not expected, or nobody cares that, you know, that he wins Liga. Nobody cared when Emery won Liga. Nobody cared when Tuchel won Liga. It's all about the Champions League. So anything less than that, it's essentially a failure. So, I mean, that doesn't make me like them. I kind of share your sort of displeasure with them as well. I'm not too keen on how things are run there at PSG, and you know, just having that sort of ruthless edge when it comes to appointing a manager and then sort of saying, okay, you haven't got the Champions League, you know, you're an absolute failure. See you later. For me, that I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me.
No, it doesn't to me. But then that's the nature of it. French football isn't as much of a challenge as it once was. I think back in the early 90s, 80s, it was one of the better leagues. But now it's, to measure success in France is now measuring success in Europe. So you can't necessarily blame the owners for wanting that level of success, I think. But yeah, it just smacks of a little, I don't know, it's kind of on the same sort of level of class as our mutual sort of hatred of the Red Bull franchise and that kind of buying of success, which I'm not a massive fan of.
There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.